The S&P 500 finished the week up 3.17% and it closed on Friday just 0.47% below the highest price it reached all week. That is a strong 5 days by any recent standard. It is also the least interesting number on the board. The chip names traded a far wider week than the index did, and by Friday they had split into a clean order that has nothing to do with who climbed the most. One of the largest companies in the market spent the whole week walking the other way. That is the week we are going to walk through before Monday opens. Intel was the widest mover among the household names. From its low at $85.62 to its high at $103.66, it covered 21.7%, which for a company this size is an enormous amount of ground in 5 sessions. What separates it from the rest of the sector is what happened at the end. It finished the week up 14.98%, added 1.88% on Friday alone on 76.8 million shares, and closed only 1.95% below its own high. A stock that ends the week that close to its best price after a run that size still had buyers at the closing bell on day 5. Whatever they were paying for on Monday, they were still paying for it on Friday. Nvidia ran the cleanest week on the board, up 13.26% across the 5 sessions, up 2.20% on Friday, and it closed 0.38% below its weekly high of $224.76. That last number is the one to sit with because it is the smallest giveback of any name in this briefing. The stock traded 105.6 million shares on Friday, the heaviest count here, and it ended the session pressing against its best price of the week. No fade into the close, no give back on the final day. A week that ends at the high is a different animal from a week that merely visits the high, and the closing print is what tells you which one you watched. AMD is where range and results stop agreeing. Top to bottom, the stock covered 16.44% this week, from $485.30 at the bottom to $530.13 at the top, and it still finished up 4.70%. So it made money. The problem is where it ended relative to where it had already been. AMD closed 8.80% below its own weekly high, the widest giveback of any chip name here, and it slipped another 1.25% on Friday while the rest of the sector was climbing. It reached the top of its range and could not hold it. That is a different week from Intel's, even though both are green, and the closing price is the only place you can see the difference. Micron lands between those two. It covered 20.63% from low to high, nearly the same stretch AMD traveled, and it held on to 11.60% of it into Friday's close. It ended the week 5.54% below its high of $928.98 after easing 0.17% on the final day, with 34.6 million shares changing hands on the way out. So the sector ranks cleanly, and the ranking is the story. Nvidia gave back almost nothing. Intel gave back a little. Micron gave back some. AMD gave back the most. 4 names, 1 sector, 1 set of 5 sessions, and the thing that separates them is not how high they got, but how much of it they were still holding when the bell rang. Broadcom ran the quiet version of the same week, up 11.21% across the 5 sessions on a range of 15.01%, and it closed 0.78% below its high after adding 1.40% on Friday. No round trip, no give back worth the name, just a steady climb that ended within sight of its best level. It is worth pausing on precisely because it was boring. The loud names in this sector split 4 different ways this week, and underneath all of that, a 4th chip name quietly banked a bigger week than the entire index without ever making a headline. Alphabet broke ranks. While the index climbed 3.17%, Alphabet finished the week down 3.07%, and the closing number hides the shape of it. At its best, the stock touched $384.48. It ended Friday at $354.30, a full 7.87% below that mark, and it slipped another 0.85% on the final day while most of the board was green around it. One of the largest companies in the market spent the entire week walking away from its own high, during a week when the index barely pulled back at all. On a board this strong, the name moving the other direction is the detail worth carrying into next week. The rest of the megacap group did its job without making headlines. Microsoft added 4.99% for the week. Meta added 5.31%. Tesla put on 5.66%, including 2.96% on Friday, and Apple managed 1.20%. Amazon was the odd one out, finishing the week down 1.38% and closing 4.44% below its high after fading through the back half. None of those numbers is a story on its own, and that is the point. Together they are the floor the week stood on. The index does not print 3.17% because one sector had a good run. It prints that number when the heaviest names in the market lean the same direction at the same time, and this week nearly all of them did. Now the indexes themselves, because a weekly number smooths over the ride. The S&P traded a 3.75% range this week, from $748.80 at the bottom to $756.85 at the top, and it closed Friday at $773.26. The final session added 0.61% on 43.6 million shares of the tracking fund, and the week ended 0.47% below its high. The tech-heavy Nasdaq fund led at 5.04%, and the small-cap fund trailed the group at 2.95%. So the strength ran deepest through the largest companies and thinned out as they got smaller. A range that narrowed with a finish that close to the top is what an orderly climb looks like in the record of actual trades. Away from the giant names, the week's biggest moves were on a different scale entirely. A stock called AMIX finished the week up 224.10% and then gave up 19.39% on Friday alone. CLRO ended the week up 163.14%. APES climbed 73.4%. And on the other side of the ledger, FCUV lost 67.02% of its value across the same 5 sessions. MoverBot reads prices, and the price record alone does not say why any of this happened, so it will not pretend to know. What the record does say is that moves like these exist every single week, far from the tickers everyone watches. That is the corner of the market this briefing checks, so you do not have to. The watch list for next week comes straight from the positions these names carry into it. Intel opens Monday defending a 14.98% week and sitting 1.95% off its high, which is the strongest close in the group. Nvidia opens parked 0.38% below its high, so any strength at all prints a fresh weekly high in the first hour. AMD starts the week 880% below its own peak, with its ceiling marked at $530.13 for everyone to see. And Alphabet opened 7.87% below its best price, the one large name that has to prove the fade is finished. 4 positions, 4 open questions. Monday answers at least one of them. So that is the week. The index up 3.17% and sitting 0.47% below its high. Intel holding a 14.98% week, Nvidia parked at its high, AMD 8.80% off its peak, and Alphabet 7.87% below its best price. Monday opens with every one of those names carrying that position into the first print. None of this is financial advice, and MoverBot does not make predictions. It is not financial advice because it is not advice at all. It reads the closing record after every session and reports what actually traded. The market does not care what anyone expected it to do this week. It only cares what got paid for. See you at the next close.